My wife and I had been married for 20 years, which, according to the internet, meant one of two things. Either we had achieved some kind of relationship enlightenment, or we were simply too tired to start over. Personally, I like to think it was a little of both. I'm Ryan, 45 years old, husband, father, remote worker, and a man whose most exciting daily decision was whether to answer emails from the patio or from the dining room. My wife Nicole and I had two daughters. Grace was 17 and possessed the rare ability to destroy a grown adult with a single eye roll. Emma was 13 and still believed family movie nights were sacred events created by God himself. Honestly, Emma was probably right. For years, life had been busy. Work, school schedules, bills, groceries, arguments over whose turn it was to unload the dishwasher. You know, romance. So when Nicole suggested renting a house for the entire summer in a small seaside town, I immediately agreed. At our age, adventure mostly meant finding restaurants with enough parking. And honestly, that sounded perfect. The town itself looked like something from one of those Hallmark movies my wife secretly watched while pretending she wasn't watching them. White houses, flower baskets, street musicians, small festivals every weekend, and enough ice cream shops to trigger diabetes just by walking past them. For the first few weeks, life felt amazing. We walked along the boardwalk, had family dinners outside, visited local markets, watched sunsets. Even Grace seemed slightly less annoyed by our existence, which, for a 17-year-old, is basically a public declaration of love. One evening, while we were walking along the main street, Nicole suddenly stopped. "Oh my God," she said. I turned around. "What?" She pointed dramatically. "Look at that place." I expected a jewelry store, or maybe a boutique. Instead, she was staring at a tiny ice cream cafe. I blinked. "Nicole, it's frozen milk." She ignored me. "No, Ryan. Look at the lights. Look at the decorations. It's adorable." That's the thing about husbands. After 20 years, you learn that adorable can cost anywhere between $6 and $6,000. Thankfully, this time it was just pistachio gelato. We all went inside. The place really was nice. Old photographs on the walls, string lights, wooden tables, live acoustic music playing softly in the background. It looked less like an ice cream shop and more like a place where retired people wrote poetry. Nicole absolutely loved it. Emma loved it because there were 7 different chocolate flavors. Grace loved it because she got to take aesthetic photos for Instagram. And I loved it because nobody asked me to fix anything for 30 whole minutes. Honestly, it was one of the best evenings we'd had in years. On the walk back home, Nicole smiled. "We should come here more often." "Sure," I said. "Besides," I added, "if I eat enough ice cream, maybe I'll finally achieve my dream body." Nicole laughed. "You mean round?" "Exactly. Round things roll faster." She laughed again, and seeing her laugh like that made me happy. After 20 years together, you don't necessarily chase butterflies anymore. You chase peace, comfort, little traditions, and at that moment, I thought we'd found another one. I had absolutely no idea that frozen desserts were about to destroy my marriage, which is probably the weirdest sentence I've ever said in my life. And trust me, I work in customer service. I've said some weird things. The next evening, Nicole went back to the ice cream cafe. At first, nobody thought anything of it. She said she wanted to take a walk. I said, "Great. Bring me back something with caramel." She said, "You don't need more sugar," which was offensive, medically questionable, and probably true. She came home 40 minutes later carrying a little paper cup of mint chocolate chip for herself and nothing for me. That was the first betrayal, not the big one, just the appetizer. "Where's mine?" I asked. She looked at me like I'd asked her to smuggle diamonds through customs. "You'd better abstain from sweets." I stared at her. "Nicole, I didn't ask for medical advice. I asked for caramel." The next night, Nicole went again. Then, the night after that. By the end of the week, her evening walk to the ice cream cafe had become a routine. At first, I thought it was cute. She had found a little place she liked, a peaceful summer habit, a harmless thing. And honestly, after 2 decades of marriage, you learn not to investigate every tiny change. Sometimes your wife buys new shampoo, sometimes she starts drinking lemon water, sometimes she suddenly decides the entire house needs better baskets. You don't ask questions, you just survive. But by the second week, I started noticing things. Small things. The kind of things you don't want to notice because noticing them means your brain is about to start working overtime like an unpaid intern. Nicole wasn't just going out for ice cream anymore. She was preparing for ice cream. There is a difference. Before these walks, she started spending more time in front of the mirror. She'd change shirts, then change back, then ask, "Does this dress look weird?" I would look up from my laptop and say, "You look great. I love that one." Nicole would tilt her head. "Great how?" "Just great," I said. She sighed. "Never mind." I should have known then that something was off, because my wife had never cared that much about how she looked before buying dessert. In our normal life, if Nicole wanted ice cream, she could walk out wearing sweatpants, flip-flops, and a sweatshirt with a coffee stain shaped like Florida. And I would still think she looked beautiful. But now she was choosing sundresses, putting on earrings, fixing her hair. Once, she asked Grace which sandals looked better. Grace looked up and said, "For ice cream?" Nicole frowned. "For walking." Grace stared at her for a second, then said, "The brown ones say casual. The white ones say you're emotionally available." Nicole froze. I nearly choked on my coffee. Emma giggled. Nicole said, "Grace." Grace lifted both hands. "What? I'm helping?" Nicole chose the white sandals. That was when my brain made a small clicking noise. Something's weird, but I ignored it. Because ignoring uncomfortable thoughts is basically the foundation of modern adult life. She came home happy every time, too happy maybe, like she'd been somewhere that made her feel young again. And at first I was glad. Nicole had been tired for years. Marriage, kids, bills, routines, they take little bites out of people. So if a little seaside cafe and a scoop of raspberry sorbet made my wife smile, fine. I was a supportive husband. One Friday evening, she came downstairs wearing a blue summer dress I hadn't seen in years. Her hair was loose. She had on lipstick, not heavy, just enough that even I noticed. If I noticed lipstick, it meant something. Nicole picked up her purse. "I'm going for a walk." I glanced toward the door. "To the cafe?" "Probably." "Probably," I repeated. She looked at me. "What?" "Nothing, just admiring the mystery. Very thrilling." She smiled faintly. "Don't be weird." "Impossible. It's one of my core features." Emma looked up from the couch. "Can I come?" Nicole paused. Just half a second. But I saw it. "Not tonight, honey," she said. "I just need a little time to myself." Emma's face fell a little. "Oh, okay." And that bothered me more than the dress, more than the lipstick, more than the perfume. Because Emma loved those walks, and Nicole knew that. After Nicole left, Emma came into the kitchen where I was pretending to read an email I'd already read 4 times. "Is Mom mad at me?" she asked. I looked at her. "What?" "No, why would you think that?" "She doesn't want me to go anymore." I closed my laptop. "Hey, your mom just wants some quiet time. Adults get like that." Emma nodded, but she didn't look convinced. Grace walked in, opened the fridge, and said without emotion, "Or she's joining a seaside ice cream cult." I stared at her. "Please don't help." Grace grabbed a soda. "I'm just saying, that's how they get you. First it's pistachio, then you're wearing linen and talking about your aura." Emma laughed. I laughed too, but not as much as I normally would have, because suddenly the joke didn't feel completely like a joke. Nicole came back almost an hour later. No ice cream for anyone else. She was smiling when she walked in. A private little smile. The kind people have when they're replaying something in their head. "Good walk?" I asked. She blinked, like I'd pulled her back from somewhere. "Yeah, it was nice." "How was the cult?" She frowned. "What?" "Nothing. Grace has theories." Grace called from the living room. "I stand by them." Nicole rolled her eyes, but she didn't laugh. She went upstairs to change, and I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the freezer. Inside were 3 unopened containers of ice cream we'd bought from the grocery store 2 days earlier. Chocolate fudge, vanilla bean, cookie dough, a whole frozen United Nations of flavors. Apparently, none of them had the emotional depth Nicole was looking for. By the 3rd week, Nicole's evening ice cream walks had become so regular that even our dog would have known the schedule, if we had a dog. At first, I tried not to overthink things. But eventually, curiosity got the better of me. One evening, while she was putting on yet another carefully selected dress for what was supposedly a 10-minute mission to acquire pistachio gelato, I said, "Hey, why don't we all go tonight?" Nicole paused, not dramatically, just long enough for me to notice. "The girls are watching a movie," she said. I shrugged. "They can survive without us. Teenagers basically raise themselves anyway." From the couch, Grace yelled, "Please don't test that theory." Emma added, "I still need rides to school." Nicole smiled weakly. "I kind of wanted some time to myself." "Okay, then I'll come and quietly judge strangers with you." She laughed a little, but something in her eyes changed. "Ryan, not everything has to be a family event." The sentence itself wasn't cruel, but the tone surprised me, because family events were kind of our thing. Movie nights, beach walks, Saturday breakfasts, inside jokes. 20 years together create habits. Little traditions become invisible threads holding everything together, and for the first time, it felt like Nicole was trying to cut one. I forced a smile. "Fair enough." She kissed my cheek. "Don't look so wounded." "I'm not wounded." "Good." She grabbed her purse and left. As soon as the front door closed, Grace slowly lowered her phone. "Interesting." I looked over. "What?" She narrowed her eyes dramatically. "Mom rejected your side quest." "Can teenagers speak English anymore?" "No, we communicate exclusively through memes now." Emma giggled. I sat down beside them. "Your mother just wants some alone time." Grace nodded. "Maybe." The word maybe hung in the air, not because Grace sounded suspicious, because she sounded observant. And teenagers notice everything. They just pretend they don't. The following day, we attended a local festival near the marina. Live music, food trucks. Tourists spending money like they had personally offended their retirement accounts. Emma bought a giant lemonade. Grace bought earrings. Nicole bought handmade soap. We sat together watching the sunset. For a moment, everything felt normal again. Then Nicole smiled at something on the stage. "Daniel would have loved this band." I turned. "Who?" She blinked. "What?" "You said Daniel." "Oh." She smiled casually. "Just someone I ran into at the cafe." "Ran into." Interesting phrase. Because people usually don't mention complete strangers by name. Emma was too busy fighting her lemonade. Grace, however, slowly turned her head. I recognized that expression. It was the same face she made whenever she watched crime documentaries. "Who's Daniel?" she asked. Nicole waved her hand. "Oh, nobody important." Grace raised an eyebrow. "People usually don't have names if they're not important." Nicole laughed. "He's just the owner of the cafe." "Ah," Grace said. "The ice cream king." Nicole smiled. "He actually owns the place." "Even better," Grace said. "Royalty." Everyone laughed. Even me. But for some reason, the name stayed in my head. Daniel. Not because I was jealous. Not because I was suspicious. Honestly, I barely thought about it. I just found it strange. Because after 20 years of marriage, I knew the names of all the important people in Nicole's life. Her college friends, Former co-workers, neighbors, cousins I could never remember. And somehow, I had never heard of Daniel. Not once. Not in 20 years. Still, I told myself I was being ridiculous. My wife had simply found a nice cafe, made a friend, nothing more. And if life has taught me anything, it's this. Whenever a husband says, "I'm probably overthinking this," he's usually about 3 weeks away from emotional damage. After that festival, Daniel started appearing in our house. Not physically. That would have actually been less concerning. No, he appeared in conversations. And once you notice something like that, it's impossible to unnotice it. At breakfast, Daniel says the tourist season used to be much busier before the pandemic. At lunch, Daniel remembers when that old lighthouse was still open. During dinner, Daniel recommended the seafood place near the marina. By the end of the week, I knew more about Daniel than I knew about some relatives. One evening I came downstairs and found Nicole smiling at absolutely nothing while making coffee. "Good mood?" I asked. She nodded. "I had a really nice conversation earlier." "With Emma?" "No." "Grace?" "No." "Your husband?" She laughed. "No." I opened the refrigerator. "Good. I was worried I was becoming too interesting." She smiled. "You know who actually has amazing stories?" Uh-oh. Whenever a sentence begins with "you know who," husbands should immediately seek shelter. "Who?" I asked. "Daniel." There he was again, like Beetlejuice, except with gelato. Apparently, when he was 17, he and his friends stole the principal's golf cart. I blinked. Our high school principal didn't even own a golf cart. Nicole froze. "Our?" I stared at her. "Wait, you went to school together?" She smiled. "Yeah." I almost dropped my water bottle. "Nicole, how exactly have we been married for 20 years, and I'm only hearing this now?" She laughed. "Because it wasn't important." Apparently it became important enough to receive daily updates. She rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic." I put my hand over my chest. "Madam, drama is all I have left at my age." She laughed, but she still looked happy. Too happy. That evening, while we were eating dinner outside, Grace suddenly looked up from her phone. "Mom talks about Daniel more than she talks about anyone in this house." The table went silent. Emma looked confused. Nicole laughed. "Oh, please." Grace shrugged. "I'm just saying. I've heard more about Daniel's childhood than Dad's this week." I nearly spit out my drink. "Thank you, Grace. Your support means everything." Nicole shook her head. "You two are impossible." But I noticed something strange. She didn't deny it. Most people would have said, "Oh, I don't talk about him that much." Instead, she simply laughed it off, which meant Grace wasn't wrong. Later that evening, after the girls had gone upstairs, I sat beside Nicole on the porch. The sea breeze felt nice. The town was quiet. Everything looked peaceful. So naturally, I ruined it. "So?" I said. "So?" she replied. "High school crush?" Nicole looked at me. "What?" "Come on, same school, same age, daily conversations, summer romance. This practically writes itself." She laughed. "You watch too many movies." "Answer the question." She smiled. "Maybe I had a crush on him once." I grinned. "There we go." I was 16, Ryan. 16-year-old crushes are serious business. Nicole laughed again. "You know what my biggest dream was back then?" "What?" "To have Daniel notice me." I smiled. "Tragic. And yet somehow you ended up with this." I pointed proudly at myself. She smiled. "I know. Life is strange." But then she looked away, and the smile changed, not disappeared, more nostalgic, like someone remembering an old song, or an old version of themselves. And suddenly, I didn't like the conversation anymore. Not because she'd once liked another guy. Who cares? Everybody has a past. I had crushes before Nicole, too. The problem wasn't the past. The problem was how alive she looked while talking about it. as if she wasn't remembering high school, as if she was visiting it. The next afternoon, Emma asked, "Can I go with Mom tonight?" Nicole hesitated again. "Maybe tomorrow, sweetheart." Emma frowned. "You said tomorrow yesterday." Nicole looked uncomfortable. "I just need some time to myself." Emma nodded. "Okay." "You know," Grace said, "you've become surprisingly protective of ice cream." Nicole looked irritated. "Your daughter has become very sarcastic." I smiled weakly. "Which one?" She didn't laugh. An hour later, Nicole left. After Nicole left, Grace came downstairs. She opened the refrigerator and stared inside. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "She's different, Dad." That caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" Grace leaned against the counter. "I don't know. She's just..." Because at this point, I think Mom's in a relationship with Pistachio. After these words, Grace went to her room. I stayed quiet. Because hearing your own thoughts come out of your child's mouth is unsettling. I sat alone in the living room thinking about something that had started bothering me. Because for 20 years, whenever Nicole found something she loved, she shared it with us. Books, movies, restaurants, vacation spots, everything. But now, for the first time in our entire marriage, she had something she wanted to keep to herself, and I didn't know why. Still, I told myself I was overreacting. Over the next few days, I tried very hard to act normal, which, according to my daughters, meant pretending everything was fine while aggressively cleaning things. Apparently, I vacuum differently when I'm stressed. Who knew? Then came Thursday. The evening everything changed. Nicole was upstairs getting ready. Again. And at this point, I had stopped pretending not to notice. The blue dress, the earrings, the perfume. Honestly, if she had told me she was attending the Oscars, I wouldn't have been surprised. I was sitting on the couch when she came downstairs. She looked beautiful. And that somehow made me sad. Because she hadn't dressed like that for date night with me in a very long time. Nicole grabbed her purse. "I'm heading out." I looked up casually. "Maybe I'll come with you tonight." The reaction was immediate. Not fear, not guilt. Irritation. Actual irritation. "Ryan, it's just ice cream." She laughed nervously. "Why are you making this weird?" The room went silent. Because that sentence hurt far more than she intended. Making this weird? I hadn't accused her of anything. I hadn't argued. I hadn't even complained. I had simply asked to join my wife. Emma looked up from the couch. "Can I come too?" Nicole sighed. "Not tonight, sweetheart." Again. Emma lowered her eyes. "Oh." Grace slowly removed one earbud. "You know," she said calmly, "for something that's just ice cream, Mom sure protects it like nuclear launch codes." Nicole stared at her. "Grace." "What?" "I'm just saying." "Enough." The sharpness in Nicole's voice surprised everyone, including Nicole. Emma froze. Grace raised both hands. "Okay, relax." Nicole closed her eyes and took a breath. Then she forced a smile. "I'm sorry, I'm just tired." Nobody answered, because everybody knew that wasn't true. She kissed Emma's head, touched my shoulder, and left. The front door closed. Silence. Emma quietly stood up. "I'm gonna finish my movie upstairs." She disappeared. Grace looked at me. "You're thinking about it, aren't you?" I knew exactly what she meant. "I don't know what you're talking about." She folded her arms. "You know I got Mom's sarcasm and your inability to lie, right?" I sighed. She sat beside me. "I think Mom's having an affair." That wasn't what I expected. "What?" She shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe she is. Maybe she isn't." She looked down. "But something's wrong." I nodded slowly. "Yeah. And you're finally admitting it." I rubbed my face. "I don't want to be that husband." "What husband?" "The paranoid one." Grace thought about it. "If Mom was going bowling every night and refusing to let anyone else come, you'd think bowling was suspicious too." I laughed despite myself. Fair point. She stood up. Whatever you do, don't ignore it. Then she walked upstairs, leaving me alone. Again. I sat there for another 10 minutes, trying to convince myself not to do something stupid. Trust your wife. Don't be ridiculous. You're 45 years old. This isn't a detective movie. And then I remembered Emma asking, "Does Mom not like hanging out with us anymore?" I remembered the comparisons, the secret smiles, the 90-minute ice cream trips, the irritation when I asked to come. And finally, I stood up, grabbed my car keys, and immediately hated myself. Because I knew exactly what I was about to do. People always imagine following someone is exciting. It's not. It's pathetic. You're sitting in your car feeling like a criminal while simultaneously hoping you're wasting your time. I wanted to find nothing. I prayed to find nothing. I wanted to come home feeling stupid. I wanted Grace to laugh at me for being paranoid. I wanted to apologize to Nicole. I wanted to spend the rest of the summer making jokes about my temporary insanity. That's what I wanted. The entire drive, I kept arguing with myself. Turn around, go home. You're embarrassing yourself. She's buying ice cream. Normal people buy ice cream. Then another voice answered, normal people don't need perfume for pistachio. 5 minutes later, Nicole parked near the cafe. I parked farther away. Like every middle-aged man who has learned everything he knows about surveillance from bad television. Through the windshield, I watched her walk toward the entrance. The little cafe glowed under the string lights. People were laughing. Music was playing. Everything looked completely normal. Nicole walked inside. I checked the clock. 8:14 p.m. See? I whispered to myself. You're an idiot. I almost started the engine. Almost. Then I noticed something. At 8:27, the lights inside the cafe began turning off. My stomach tightened. Customers started leaving, one by one. The open sign disappeared, but Nicole never came out. I frowned. Maybe she was helping clean. Maybe she was in the restroom. Maybe. The back door opened. A man stepped outside. Dark hair, about my age, laughing. And behind him, Nicole. She was laughing too. Not her polite laugh, not her family laugh. This was different. Lighter, younger. The man locked the door. Nicole said something. He laughed. Then the two of them started walking toward the boardwalk, toward the old wooden pier, and sitting alone in my car, I finally knew what Daniel looked like. For a few seconds, I just sat there, staring, not moving. Because when you spend weeks imagining different scenarios, your brain somehow never prepares you for reality. I watched them walk toward the pier, just talking, laughing, looking comfortable. I waited another minute, giving myself one last chance to leave. Go home. Forget this. Trust your wife. Pretend you never came. But then I remembered Emma's face, Grace's warnings, and Nicole's irritation when I'd simply asked to come along. So I got out of the car. The night air felt cool. The ocean smelled like salt and summer. Tourists still wandered around the boardwalk. The closer I got to the pier, the slower I walked. Not because I was afraid of what I'd find, because I already knew. Deep down, I think I'd known for weeks. People don't suddenly become strangers overnight. They become strangers one little choice at a time. I reached the entrance to the old wooden pier, and there they were, about 50 yards away, sitting on one of the benches, talking. Daniel said something. Nicole laughed. Then she touched his arm, like she'd done it 1,000 times. I stayed. Daniel stood up. Nicole stood too. And then he hugged her, and Nicole hugged him back. She held on, and in that moment, I suddenly realized something. The physical part wasn't what hurt. It was the emotional part. Because standing there in the dark, I knew with absolute certainty that my wife had already shared pieces of herself with another man. My foot hit one of the wooden planks. The sound echoed. Nicole jumped. She turned around, and the color drained from her face. Ryan? Daniel immediately stepped back. Nicole looked terrified, which told me more than any explanation ever could. For a second, nobody spoke. The waves crashed below us. Somewhere behind us, music from the boardwalk continued playing. The entire world kept moving, as if mine hadn't just stopped. Daniel swallowed hard. Ryan, I raised my hand. Don't. Silence. He stopped talking. I looked at him, really looked at him, and suddenly I didn't hate him. Not in that moment. I didn't know him. He didn't owe me vows. He didn't stand beside me 20 years ago. Nicole did. So I turned toward her. She was already crying. Ryan, please. I shook my head, slowly. Whatever either of you have to say, I said quietly, isn't going to help either of us tonight. Nicole covered her mouth. Ryan, it's not. Please. For the first time in 20 years, my voice made her stop talking. Daniel looked miserable. Honestly, the guy looked like he'd rather wrestle sharks than remain on that pier. Good. I wasn't having a great evening either. Nobody moved. Nobody knew what to do. Then I nodded once, and I turned around. Ryan! Nicole called after me. I kept walking. Ryan, wait! Still walking. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Then Daniel's voice. Nicole, let him go. Good advice. The best thing he'd done all evening. I walked back toward the parking lot, past the tourists, past the restaurants, past the families eating ice cream, which felt almost insulting, because apparently ice cream had become my personal supervillain. By the time I reached my car, my hands were shaking. 20 years. 20 years of birthdays, Christmas mornings, mortgage payments, and suddenly, sitting alone behind the steering wheel, I realized something terrifying. I had no idea what happened next, because nobody prepares you for the chapter after your heart breaks. I was driving home alone. The drive home felt strangely normal, which was almost offensive. The radio kept playing cheerful summer songs. People crossed the street. Traffic lights changed. Some guy in a convertible was singing like he'd personally invented happiness. By the time I reached the house, all the lights were still on. I walked inside. Grace and Emma were both sitting in the living room, waiting. Emma immediately stood up. Dad! She smiled. Then she looked behind me. Her smile disappeared. Where's Mom? I froze. Because nobody gives husbands a handbook for moments like this. How do you answer that question? How do you protect your children without lying? I walked into the kitchen, opened the freezer. Inside sat 3 untouched containers of grocery store ice cream, chocolate, vanilla, cookie dough. The entire frozen family we'd apparently abandoned weeks ago. I stared at them for a second. Then I let out a bitter little laugh. Emma and Grace were standing behind me. Still waiting, still looking at me. And before I could stop myself, I said, looks like your mom decided she wanted to try different flavors. Silence. Grace blinked. Emma looked confused. Dad? Immediately I regretted saying it. Not because it wasn't true, because they were kids. My pain wasn't their burden. I closed the freezer, took a deep breath, and knelt beside Emma. She looked worried. What's happening? I forced the gentlest smile I could manage. This is an adult problem. She looked ready to cry. Did I do something wrong? That question shattered me, because children always blame themselves first. I wrapped my arms around her. No. I held her tighter. None of this is your fault. Promise? I promise. She buried her face against my shoulder. Grace stood quietly nearby. No sarcasm, no jokes, just concern, which somehow scared me more than anything else. After Emma finally calmed down, Grace looked at me. Carefully. Did you find out? I nodded once. She closed her eyes, not surprised, just sad. Oh. I stood up. I'm going upstairs. Neither girl stopped me. I climbed the stairs slowly. I entered our bedroom. Our bedroom. That thought alone almost made me laugh. because suddenly nothing felt shared anymore. I opened the closet, pulled out my suitcase, and started packing. Not dramatically, not throwing clothes, not angry, just quietly. Shirts, jeans, toothbrush, phone charger, the official survival kit of every emotionally damaged middle-aged man. Halfway through packing, I heard the front door downstairs open, then hurried footsteps. Nicole. A minute later, she appeared in the doorway. The second she saw the suitcase, she stopped breathing. "Ryan?" Her voice broke immediately. She was already crying. Not elegant movie tears, real tears, messy, terrified. "Please don't do this." I kept folding clothes. "Ryan, please." Silence. It was a mistake. Still folding. "I still love you." I placed another shirt inside the suitcase. She stepped closer. "Please say something." Finally, I looked up, and for the first time all night, I asked the only question that mattered. "Did you love me on the pier?" Nicole froze, completely froze. Her mouth opened, then closed. Tears streamed down her face. But no answer came, because some questions don't need explanations. They just need honesty. And honesty had apparently left our marriage long before I did. "Ryan," she whispered, "please don't throw away 20 years over one mistake." I slowly closed the suitcase. Then I looked straight at her. "Nicole?" She wiped her tears desperately. "You made hundreds of choices." My voice remained quiet. Tonight was just the first time I saw them. Nicole completely broke. And somehow, watching her cry hurt almost as much as everything that came before. I left the next morning, not that night. Despite everything, I stayed until sunrise. Not for Nicole, for the girls. Emma cried when she saw my suitcase near the front door. Grace hugged me first. No jokes, no sarcasm, just a hug. And somehow, that almost broke me. Before I left, Emma asked the question I'd been dreading. "Dad, are you coming back?" I knelt beside her. "Always for you?" I smiled softly. She hugged me so hard I thought she might actually crack a rib, which honestly would have been easier to explain than divorce. Then I drove home, our real home, the one we'd spent 20 years building together, the one where every wall held memories. And for the first time in 2 decades, it was quiet, painfully quiet. Nicole stayed at the rental house with the girls until the end of summer. I visited constantly, took Emma out for breakfast, helped Grace look at colleges, attended every family event I could, because Nicole and I were falling apart. But I refused to let the girls feel abandoned. 3 weeks later, I filed for divorce. Nicole begged me not to. She called, texted, cried. She came home early from the seaside town and tried everything. Apologies, promises. For the first few months, she repeated the same sentence over and over. It was only emotional, as if emotional betrayal somehow came with a discount. One afternoon, I finally told her, "Nicole, I would have preferred finding out you hated me." She looked shocked. "What?" I sighed. "Because hate still means you're fighting for something. You gave the best parts of yourself to someone else while I was sitting right beside you." She cried again, but there wasn't anything left to say. Eventually, she admitted something she'd been avoiding. She hadn't fallen in love with Daniel. Not really. She'd fallen in love with being 17 again, with being noticed, with nostalgia, with the version of herself she thought she'd lost. And somewhere in the middle of that fantasy, she forgot the people who had actually shared her real life. Ironically, her friendship with Daniel didn't survive. Once reality replaced excitement, they slowly stopped talking. By the time our divorce was finalized, they barely spoke at all. Apparently, summer memories don't pay mortgages. Grace started college the following year. She's studying journalism. Emma adjusted more slowly. For a while, she hated ice cream. Seriously, she refused to eat it, which made me feel terrible and laugh at the same time. Eventually, she recovered. Kids are stronger than we think. Nicole moved into a small townhouse We remained civil. Birthdays, graduations. As for me, life moved on. Sometimes people don't leave because they stop loving you. Sometimes they leave because they stop seeing the life that's right in front of them. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.